Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. It is time to review the new Jethro Tull album, Curious Ruminant. Came out, I guess, like 2 weeks ago. I have listened to this album a lot. I think it's approaching 10 times, and I think I got a good grip on it, so it is time to do my review. Of course, this is the third Tull album since, I guess Ian is really, back as Jethro Tull, following the Zealot Gene and Rock Flute. And both of those, I had the deluxe edition, the 3-disc sets, the 2 CDs, and the Blu-ray. I wanted to get the same on the Curious Ruminant, but they had a printing error with the booklet, and at the price that it was going for, it kind of pissed me off, so I went for the regular version. I'll get that deluxe edition at some point when they fix it. So this is Curious Ruminant. Let me show you what the packaging is. Kind of follows the same kind of a theme here, as far as that dark gray, and I kind of like it. I think it's actually a pretty cool cover. This is the back cover, and this is what it looks like inside. You got the booklet, and the booklet's actually pretty good. There's who's in the band. So let me show you the booklet, which I just tore. God damn, man, Digipacks. That is the cover, and you get a whole forward from Ian. I really like it. It's hard to read it, of course, but it shows you who's in the band. We got Ian Anderson, David Goodyear on bass, John O'Hara on keyboards, Jack Clark's a new guy. He's on electric guitar. And you got Scott Hammond on some drums, and you got James Duncan. That's Ian's son, actually. He's on the other drums, and Andrew Giddings on piano. And you actually get a whole song-by-song commentary from Ian, which I really like. It's a more personal album. The lyrics are more personal. He talks about that he uses the word I, and you do get the lyrics as well. I'm not a huge lyric guy. I'm not the kind of guy who sits there and reads lyrics typically. But Ian is obviously an amazing lyricist and phenomenal songwriter, and I have nothing but the utmost respect. I consider him a musical genius. You know that. If you know my channel, I think Tull should be in the Hall of Fame. Number one that should be in it, that's not. There's the CD, and there's the picture. I actually like the graphics. They all have that kind of mask on, and there's Ian in the back. So let's go through the song-by-song analysis and see what I think about it. So it opens up with Puppet and the Puppet Master. The idea basically, Ian, is who's the puppet, who's the puppet master? Is the guy on the stage him, or is it the people in the crowd? It kind of opens up with like 15 seconds of like a moody, smoky piano, and I'm like, is this Billy Joel? Sounds like the opening of a Billy Joel song. But then you get this circular flute riff that kicks in with the band. It's very muscular when the band kicks in. The flute's way in front, as it is on most of the album. The verses get a little bit slower, but the chorus and the instruments, when they kick back in, it really does rock. There's these touches of accordion on the song as well as on the whole album, which is really good. And 2.5-minute mark or so, you get a really nice electric guitar solo from Jack Clark. And I'm like, that's pretty good. There's for all you fans of Martin Barr, and I am as well, it works really good. And I like what he does. He gets the electric guitar solo, goes right into the flute solo. He actually could have made the guitar solo a bit longer, but it goes into the flute solo, and then you get a nice Hammond organ solo, and it works together. It flows really well. Even the drums have some balls on it. It's a really good opener. I like it. Puppet and the Puppet Master. Next up is the title track, Curious Ruminant. You've probably seen the video. I think that was the initial single, I guess you would call it. Again, opens with this delicate piano, and you're like, this is kind of interesting. And then it gets a nice, delicate flute that comes in, and you get like this chugging guitar riff that repeats throughout the song. It's chugging. It's interesting. Then when the verses come in, you get like this drum marching on the snare drum kind of a thing, which kind of, for me, feels a little bit stilted. But then it picks up again when you get that chugging guitar riff, and it becomes more muscular. And throughout it, you get these really nice guitar touches. When you get that guitar, that chugging guitar, there's like these little guitar touches that are really nice. Dare I say, Martin Barr-like. Yeah, it's good. And it goes throughout the song. It almost has like this push and pull feel. It's almost like fighting itself in a way. You got the slower parts and then the muscular parts, which I much prefer. Then at the 4-minute mark or so, it really picks up. The guitarist, you get a lot of great musical interplay. The flute, the electric guitar, the band's really hitting its mark. Overall, it's a good track. I don't think it's great, but it's good. Next one, how do you pronounce this one? Dusanane Hill. And that's got a really nice opening. It starts with beautiful flute, accordion, a lot of accordion on there, and it really works well. A lovely melodic bass, and then it goes into the song, which throughout has beautiful flute work, nice acoustic guitar. The band kicks in. Ian kind of uses this speaking vocal throughout the album. Listen, we don't even need to touch on what happened with his voice. Let's just move on. He's got some vocal effects on it as well when he's speaking, and it works. It works fine. His vocals are actually pretty high in the mix, which I think is pretty cool. Overall, the song got some nice bits, but it just doesn't, as a song, it just doesn't go that far for me. But there's great flute work on it. It's fine. It's just not a great song. Then you get the Tipu House, opens again with a really nice upbeat mood. You're like really joyous, toe tappy. You're like, well, this is really, really cool. And then the lyrics kick in and the song kind of slows, and I kind of missed that joyful opening. It's kind of slows down. But that enjoyable part that's really upbeat returns throughout the song. So it goes to the slower part, back to that joyous part throughout. Again, kind of like this push-pull effect with the really joyous part and the slow part. But around the 2-minute mark or so, there's this musical bridge that kind of goes to like halftime and a beautiful flute interlude on it. It's really good. Now, there's 2 mixes on the deluxe edition. I only have the first mix, but sort of. Gotta say that Callum, who's a dedicated viewer, great guy, he actually sent me a digital file, and I'm only about physical media. I actually burned a copy of the Bruce Sword mix, and that's what that version is right there. So I kind of have the other mix from the, would have been in the deluxe. I don't have the Atmos mix. But I was able to compare that Sword mix. And the Sword mix is definitely, I hear differences. On the Tipu House, there's a lot of more effects. But overall, it's a good song. I love that joyous part of it. But this push-pull effects doesn't make it a great song. It's just good. Then you get Savannah of Paddington Green, and there's your acoustic Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull. He's on acoustic. It's got this lovely melodic bass, keyboard sounds filling it out. It's a wonderful flute throughout that song, as the whole album. The Sword mix is bigger with more effects. I love the accordion filling out the sound. The drums actually work really well on that song as well. I love acoustic bass Tull, and that one doesn't disappoint. It is a wonderful acoustic Tull track, Ian song. It's a highlight of the album Savannah of Paddington Green. Next you get Stygian Hand, and that opens with like this Middle Eastern, Indian kind of a sound. Ian's with his acoustic and the accordion and the band filling it out, and it kind of also push-pull. It goes in and out with that Indian, Middle Eastern feel, with back to the main part of the song, and it repeats that pattern throughout. The Sword version is also bolder with louder effects, I find. It's an interesting song. Maybe it could have fit on Roots to Branches, but not as great instrumentally as that Tull. It's got a nice production. It just doesn't totally lift off for me. I'm like, it's a cool, interesting song, but it's not great. I think if there could have been some nice electric guitar leads in there, it could have helped that song lift off more. Then you get Over Jerusalem, interesting idea, talking about Jerusalem. Ian singing over a nice, delicate music at first. His voice works fine, Again, it's not the Ian Anderson of old. We're never going to get that. We haven't had that really since the 80s. So let's move on, and he works with what he has. More speaker than a singer. but he's got effects on the voice, and it's high in the mix. He's not burying it, and it works good. The sword version has more effects on his vocals, which are almost distracting on that, maybe too much. There's some nice electric guitar work, which is nice to hear. Nice, tasteful music playing in the verses. At around the 2.5-minute mark, you get a flute-led jam. The band sounds muscular. Around 3:30 mark, I was looking, you get a great electric guitar solo, which I love to hear. It brings you back to that earlier Tull with Martin Barr, so to speak. And that, again, leads into a flute solo, which goes back to the guitar solo and back to the flute solo, and you get a really nice interaction. The band sounds strong. Even the drums sound good, although I would put the drums much higher in the mix. It's a good song, but it's not great. What's the issue is I kind of missed the Tull hooks, like with songs that get stuck in your head. They're interesting songs, Stygian Hand, Over Jerusalem. They're interesting, but they're not songs that are sticking in my head, basically. Let's go to Drink from the Same Well. This is the 16-minute epic, right? I went to it thinking, what's this going to be, 16 minutes? Well, all I got to tell you, it opens with the most gorgeous flute. It's melodic. It's haunting. It's got this beautiful piano. It's got nice, tasteful bass accompanying it. This is a really special opening. The song's got like 5 sections, really like 5 different songs in a sense. So that's the opening of it. It's haunting. It reaches right to your soul, your heart. It is just so beautiful. The next section that goes into is also instrumental. You kind of get that same flute theme, but now it's more upbeat. You get light drums that are adding it. The bass is more muscular. The band's kicking in. Then it would slow down again. The keyboard's filling out the sound. The flute work is just off the chart. It is just tremendous. Melodic. He's working it, man. It's just tremendous. The third section, still led by the flute, but a different pattern this time. You get the keyboard, you get the bass, you get the drum as the musical bed, but it's building up, led by Ian's flute work, and back and forth with piano solos. It almost becomes jazz-like. It is just fantastic, which then goes into the fourth section, which is the quote-unquote song. And Ian starts singing, speak singing, drink from the same well as you, and then it does, da-na-na. So whenever he sings that, it's followed by this lovely piano theme. And it just works so great. The band picks it up. It grows. It's really, really effective. You get this wondrous, really high flute solo, which has like these acoustic guitar strums with it. Then that goes into a lower register flute solo. And then back to the higher flute. And Ian's flute work is amazing. I got to say, I don't know if his flute work's ever been better. On this whole album, it's just tremendous. Rock Float also had great flute work. His flute work is just off the chart. The highlight, really, of the album, to me. Back to the vocals, repeating the chorus. The song ends, but not really, because then it goes back to like that part 2, that upbeat, jazzy kind of instrumental section again, and it finishes off with the various different flute motifs from earlier, those first 2 or 3 sections. Kind of comes full circle. This song, Drink from the Same Well, is classic Jethro Tull. It would be, to me, on like it's not a hit, but it would be like on the best of Tull. That's amazing Jethro Tull, Drink from the Same Well. It's the high point of the album. In fact, it's probably the high point of the 3 albums. Really, that's how great it is. And then the album ends with Interim Sleep, which starts with the kick drum replicating a heartbeat. It's got interesting sounds and effects, and Ian reads a poem to really effective, nice music. It's about death. That interim sleep takes him. What will happen when he dies? When we die, the soul lifts out of the body, and we can soar like a bird to our next station. Our body leaves, and we look down at our body, and it's just an empty vessel now, and we take a journey. And it's a really interesting way to end this album. I've never heard anything like this on a Jethro Tull album. Kind of reminded me of the Moody Blues. You know, you'd always have that Graham Edge part where he's reciting a poem over interesting music. That's what this is. It really could be from a Moody Blues album. But the Moody Blues, when they did that, it would go into another song. This ends the album. And the kick drum, replicating the heartbeat, slows and slows and slows and ends. And that's how it ends. We die, and that's how the album ends. It's pretty weird, but pretty effective, be honest with you. The album ends really on this high note with Drink from the Same Well into Interim Sleep. It's pretty cool, gotta say. So how do I feel overall? I don't want to get into the whole Jethro Tull. It's Jethro Tull. Ian Anderson was always the leader of Jethro Tull. He writes the songs, he arranges, he produces, he dictates what he wants. But there is a difference, and it's what I've talked about on these two albums, to a lesser extent on this album, but even so. Back in those, let's say, golden years of Tull, yeah, Ian Anderson wrote it, arranged it, all of that. But any mark of a great band is they take those kernels that the songwriter writes and they take it to another level. The biggest issue I've had with this Tull is in the drumming. Not saying that these guys aren't great drummers, they might be, but they just play, especially on these two albums, so basically. And I always think back, whether it's Clive Bunker or Barry Mobarlo especially to me, but even, Doan Perry and Mark Craney, these guys were incredible drummers. And on these two albums, and I like these two albums, I especially like Zelagene a lot. But I was like, man, I just missed the drumming. And even on this, the drumming I find is better on this album, even on the sword mixes especially, but it's still pretty basic. I think like Tull, I think is bigger. It could use more electric guitar solo. Martin Barr or whoever could play the lead guitar, and anybody could. A lot of people could play it. I'd like more of that. But, the bass work is great. The keyboard is great. It's very full sound. The accordion stuff is spectacular. And most importantly, the flute work is off the chart. Ian's voice is what it is, but I'm okay with it at this point. He does the best he can. And in the production of the CD, it's fine. I wish the drums were just better, bigger in the mix and more adventurous. But it's better on this album, I think, than these two albums. So overall, it's a mighty fun album. As a huge Tull fan, I'm really glad to have it. I miss the hooky stuff, whatever it is, some people hate that stuff, but, Too Old to Rock and Roll's got that great catchy riff. I hear that song once, it's in my head, Bungle in the Jungle, whatever, skate, even the ballads, that stuff that would stick in your head. And this latter-day Tull stuff, I find as far as songs, they're interesting, they're really good, but the songs don't really stick in my head. From this album, the two best parts for me is the acoustic one, Savannah and Paddington Green, which I really like, and Drink from the Same Well is extraordinary. It is that great. It's worth it just for that. But I wish some of the songs were more catchier. But, overall, it's a really good record. If I was going to rate it in stars, I'm a tough reviewer. 5 stars to me is one of the greatest albums of all time. A classic beyond the band. 4 stars is excellent, like the top amongst the best of that band. 3 stars is good, 2's fair, 1 is lousy. I'd give this a good 3.5 stars, and for me, that's a really good review. That's a really good album. If you're new to Jethro Tull, would I go start you with any of these? Absolutely not. You need to hear that classic Tull. The stuff that's catchier, that sticks in your head, that's riffier, the great riffs that stick in your head. You don't really get this on this album nor on these albums. But if you really like Tull, this is really good. It's really good. And I'm glad to have it. So there's my review, song by song. Let me know what you think. I did song by song reviews of these albums. If you go to my playlist, you could actually go to album reviews, and you'll find a full-length video of this, a full-length video of this, and then you'll find this as well. But I'd love to know your opinion on Curious Ruminant. and where it stands in the Tull discography, or more importantly, really where it stands amongst these three. Because this is a newer Tull. It really is. And personally, I'm glad to have it. I think it's mighty fine. That's about it. As always, I appreciate you watching me. Send me your comments. Stay safe, stay healthy. And if you're new to my channel, why not hit subscribe? There is over 400 videos and playlists and really good stuff for over 4 years I'm doing this. So there you go. Curious Ruminant. As always, thanks so much. I'll see you next time on the Alan Rosenberg Show.